Once you have selected the task with the goal in mind, then you must make sure that you have shared the essential information with the students. In other words, remove barriers due to reading, due to not being able to read a problem and understand what it says, and any information they might need for the problem, they will either be given or pointed to a resource. There's something Mike Schmoker calls a close read. We like close reads because it clarifies for the student what the facts are in the task, what is to be done in the task, but it does not point them to a solution method. We'll try to demonstrate that. The other role of the teacher is to establish a classroom culture that is low risk. All ideas and methods are valued. Students choose and share their methods. And good tasks elicit different methods. Some of them will be wrong. But they consider mistakes to be a learning site for everyone. Right now, when a student gives a wrong answer, what do we tend to do? Do we tell them it's wrong? Sorry! And then we find someone else who has the right answer. We call that stopping at the answer. And if we ask that student to explain his or her thinking, might we even get them to find their own mistake and correct it, as opposed to feeling like a failure? And this is a quote from Phil Darrow. Phil Darrow is one of the key writers of the Common Core State Standards for Mathematics, and he says the correctness of an answer resides in the mathematical argument. In other words, if it's justifiable mathematically, it is correct. That goes for answers as well as strategies.
So why focus on mathematical tasks? You heard Sue talk a little bit about prototype assessments that are going to be tasks. But the idea of focusing on mathematical tasks is to really get at the understanding and looking at different strategies. So if you look at what we have up there, it's an opportunity for them to learn, but it's also an opportunity for them to talk about what they did as well as hear what others talked about. Tasks do influence learners by directing their attention to a particular aspect of content by looking at it in different ways and looking at the information. Sue said earlier, this is not wide open where it's problem-based learning, but the task is going to take them to a place we want them to go. The task could eventually develop a procedure or process. It could reinforce an important mathematical concept or idea, but it's being done by the students, not being given out by the teacher. And this is, again, a quote from another one of the writers that we heard. The level and kind of thinking required by mathematical instructional tasks does influence what students learn. We're going to actually skip this task for two reasons. One, there's so many people in the room, and two, we don't have enough snap cubes for all of you. So rather than just some of you doing this and others sitting there, we're going to skip this one because we have other tasks we want to get to. But we're pointing you to a resource, this Super Source CD, which is put out by ETA Cuisenaire. It's been around for a long time, but it literally has by grade bands and kinds of manipulatives. So you can select a grade band and a type of manipulative, and it gives you a number of different activities using that manipulative. And it has all of the resources you need as a teacher to use that. Now the unfortunate piece, it's fairly expensive. It's not free. It's over $200. But it is a good resource if you're looking for a resource to use or to have that would help you using manipulatives. And they do have it for even, I think, high school. There's a high school grade. No, it's just through 8. She's a detail person. I'm the more big picture, so sometimes there are details I turn and look to her for. So anyway, this is an activity, and I think we gave you that activity on the handout. So Sue talked about mathematical practice standards. Sue Edens talked about these. We look at these as the spirit of Common Core, and we look at these as student mathematical practice standards. There are things that students should be doing in the classroom, and you as a teacher should be orchestrating these. So these are two of them, or this is the first one, I should say. And look at one of the words in the title that right now our students don't do a very good job of. Actually, there's a couple of things in the title. How well do your students persevere? I get by the silence, not very well. In fact, you have some students, as soon as you hand something out, their hand immediately goes in the air. They couldn't have possibly even read it yet, and their hand goes in the air. The other piece is the making sense of problems. Right now, our students' focus, for the most part, is getting an answer. It's not on making sense of the problem or even learning from the problem. It's about being able to do that problem. Which then means if we change that problem at all, or give them a different problem that doesn't look like that, or give them a problem from a topic that we did 2 months ago, they're lost. They don't want to even try to dig in. So if you look at this practice standard, they analyze, they make conjectures, they consider similar problems. When was the last time you handed a problem out and a student said to you, I considered a similar problem to this one? Okay? And check and always ask, does this make sense? And again, we see students that just get answers and they're done. There's a standard that we don't have up there talking about decontextualizing and contextualizing. And there was actually a NAEP problem given a number of years ago that you have this many students in a school, you are going on a field trip and your bus holds this many students, and the question was, how many buses do you need? Lots of words. Students took those numbers out, did the division of them, and the most selected wrong answer was 10 buses, remainder 3. I don't think they made sense out of that problem. So there's lots of evidence out there. We now have a task for you, and we're going to try to do this at least by maybe tables or pairs of tables. So there's only 2 or 3 of you at a table. You might want to move to another table. But what we're going to ask you to do, or what we have available for you if you want to use it at all, we have pattern blocks here. And you can use them if you want. But take a look at this problem and work on it. Now before you do that, and Sue talked about a close read. So a close read is, and we might, depending on the grade level, even have a student read. We might ask a student to read that first sentence and tell us what's a fact.
Do not start the problem.
And your brighter students, and even some of your other students, you're going to have to say, set on your hands, or put your hands on your head, or whatever you need to do. But the idea behind a close read is we want to get the facts out. One of the things that we see and believe happens often is our students don't really read a problem, or are not equipped to read a problem and to get the information out of it they need. And so we would ask students to tell us about facts, and we would literally write this on the board, because the other thing we see is we do a lot of things orally, and most of our students are visual learners. So we would write the facts on the board. So we would go through these a sentence at a time, asking for facts. And Sue's trying to get me to do something.
I want to do it.
Oh.
I want to do the close read.
Yes, dear.
So what's a fact from the first sentence? Just shout it out. 84 quarters. So we might write 84 quarters. How are they arranged? Side by side. I might even have 2 students stand up and say, what does side by side mean? Or 3 students. What does it mean? What does it look like? Because there are students who may not know that. We're removing barriers. What's the second sentence say? You replace every second quarter with a dime. What does that mean? Take out a quarter, put in a dime. How could we look at that more carefully? What quarters do we take out? The even quarters, so does that mean we would number them? Maybe, right? Every other. Is every second the same as every other? Is that something that we need to discuss? Is it possible that every second quarter might not mean the same thing to every student in the room? That's why we need this discussion. It's called a clarifying discussion. In the third sentence, what is a fact? Replace every third coin with a nickel. What does that mean? Well, it means they're going to have nickels, dimes, and quarters at this point. I agree. But what does every third mean? After.
You just say, oh, I'm just going to put down. Oh, I'm going to do this problem. I'm putting the 4 coins down.
That sequence is important, isn't it? It's like critical to the problem, but we're not going to tell them. But the after is important. This is a decoding of word problems. How much time do we spend decoding word problems for students? This is not keywords, folks. This isn't of means times. Because sometimes it doesn't. And once again, in the next sentence.
Before that, where do you start?
Yeah, where do you start? Good question. And we are not telling them what the task is about. How many of you are told when you are being evaluated you must put the objective for the day before you begin? Anybody?
Yeah.
Don't do that here. Gives away the task, takes out the fun. Objectives are important, but that doesn't have to be first. As long as it's by the end of the period. This is what we accomplished today. The objective is out. It does not have to be first. And with tasks, generally you don't want to. And so on and so on. And we would be writing these on the board and we would number the statements. Number 1, there are 84 quarters lined up. Number 2, da-da-da-da. Then you're walking around monitoring group work and there are going to be questions, aren't there? Well, I don't remember about da-da-da-da. And you go, check number 3 on the board. You are not the answer source. Does this look different from the typical U.S. classroom where the teacher knows it all and the student's job is to figure out what the teacher wants? Finally, what is the question? The total value of the 84 coins. To take a page from the Singapore math, we would now write the answer sentence before we work the problem. Why? Why would we write the answer sentence first? To focus on the task at hand, this is what you have to answer. How many times do students do the math, work the problem, get an answer, write it down, and it doesn't answer the question? If you answer the question first and leave a blank, that's your does it make sense check. Does it fit? Does it work? So that's our close read. All right, we're going to have you now do this task. Come and get what, if you want manipulatives, come and get some pattern blocks. They work quite well for this. You could use snap cubes. We have those too. You don't have to use manipulatives, but you may if you wish. And that's another part of Common Core. We'll make them available if you want to use them. We're not going to tell you how to do this, but we are going to give you time to work and think. Seven minutes.